All right, guys, we got a brand new project on the channel, and that probably just threw you off seeing the blue oval because, you know, for me, the most part, I work on GM products, but we do have a brand new project today, and it's actually not my own truck, which is good news because that means it's the first client build of Tolman Performance in the year 2021. So, drum roll please. This vehicle, obviously, it's the Ford. Place your guesses below before I do the reveal in 3, 2, 1. Bam, it's a 93 F150 single cab, short box, 4-wheel drive, and under the hood we've got the 351 Windsor. Now, in my opinion, this is actually one of the coolest looking body styles of Ford, and I know you GM guys give me a hard time when I call the GMT 400 trucks an OBS because I think partly you Ford guys also claim the term OBS for this body style of truck. I'm not really sure what generation of F-150 this is because they made zillions of them, but I think 93 to 97, correct me if I'm wrong. Anyway, this is one of my favorite body styles. The owner picked this truck up in Nevada, which means it's been in the desert most of its life. And as such, it's really, really clean. I mean, the paint's probably faded, but the frame has typical light surface rust, but the inner rockers, there's no rot. It's in really, really nice shape. And it's an XLT, which means it has some of the nicer options on the inside. It has carpet, cloth seats, it has power windows, power locks, air conditioning, all that good stuff. Has the headliner. Really clean, really nice truck. The inside of the bed is pretty straight, no major rust or damage. You know, this truck was used, but probably by a homeowner. It wasn't necessarily a contractor's truck. I mean, down the side, everything is pretty straight. It has one fuel tank. I know some of these had two. I'll be honest, guys, I'm really not up on all the Ford facts like I am on the GM stuff, but just from what I can tell, this is a really clean, really nice truck. So the question is, what exactly are we going to be doing to this truck today? Now, long term, I've talked with the owner. We have a couple different plans for things like some suspension upgrades, some major motor power increases, but that's not what we're going to be doing today. Today, we have a pile of parts right down here that are going to make this truck sound and perform a little bit better. All right, today's job is going to be building a custom exhaust. It's going to be stainless steel, and it's all based around a Black Widow Venom 250 muffler. Now, I've tried probably almost all the exhaust brands throughout my career. I've tried Borla, Magnaflow, Flowmaster, Cherry Bomb, Thrush, and probably a half a dozen other styles of muffler. And the last new to me muffler that I tried was a Spintech Pro Street 9000 that went on the Suburban. And I really like how that sounds for a single muffler with factory catalytic converters. But in all my lifetime, I've actually never tried a Black Widow muffler. And I know they're really popular right now. I don't know if I should say an up and coming brand, but they're definitely not they haven't been around from what I know as long as, some of the established muffler brands, Flowmaster, Magnaflow, and so on. But anyway, I really like how they sound online, and this will be my first time trying one in person. So we'll see how it goes. I did choose the Venom 250, which is the second quietest muffler they make, I believe. I'm pretty sure the Venom 300 is the quietest, and then they have, the Neighbor Hater and the Angry Housewife and some other really cool named mufflers that are a lot louder. But the owner of this truck didn't want to go super, super aggressive. He wanted something has a little more rumble than stock. Not that this is stock. This has I believe, a Flowmaster on it. I'll show you that in a minute. But he wanted something that's a little bit more aggressive, but not ridiculously obnoxious. So we chose the Venom 250. Now, whether or not you love doing emissions testing, which I guess honestly, who loves doing it? We live here in the state of Utah where emissions testing is a part of life. So the owner also wanted to make sure that the exhaust system that we build today will pass an emissions test, which means we need a catalytic converter. So I grabbed a few other odds and ends. We grabbed a Magnaflow 50 state legal 3-inch high flow cat, grabbed a couple of ball and socket connectors, which actually now that I'm looking at this box, I realize I only have one when I believe I should have two. So I'll have to look into that. But I grabbed some Vibrant barb style exhaust hanger stock, grabbed some of these rubber hanger isolators, a V-band clamp that'll just allow me to make the system removable in the middle for easier servicing. And then I also grabbed two builder's kits, a 2.5 and a 3-inch, both in stainless steel. So, like I said, 100% custom from scratch. I'm going to be designing this around the stock manifolds for now. I actually did order a set of Bassani equal length shorty headers that'll be a direct replacement. So whenever those do show up, I think they're like another 2 or 3 weeks behind all this good stuff. Whenever they do show up, it should be a direct replacement. I can just swap those out. If not, I'll just have to do a minor tweak, possibly to the flange side, but we'll cross that road when it gets here, because for the most part, like I said, the job today is just building the exhaust. I believe it has a welded in Flowmaster muffler. I know the owner said it might have a couple of exhaust leaks, so before we take that off, I'll just start it up real quick and give you a couple of shots of the exhaust so we can hear how it sounds. Alrighty, teardown is complete. Everything went really smoothly, and I'm super happy those exhaust manifold bolts came out in one piece, because if you've ever had to fix a broken off exhaust manifold stud, well, you know how much of a pain in the butt that is. So everything went smoothly, like I said, and now we're ready to start reconstructing the system from scratch. And we're going to improve both upon the sound and the construction and the material that this thing was made out of. I've got all the old stuff chopped up, it's in the bed, and you can really see the condition it was in. You know, the muffler was just about rusted through. It had a couple different sizes of pipe in here. I mean, it steps down from like 2.5 to 2 1/4. I think there's 1 or 2 different sizes in the middle there as well. And just overall, it's rusty and it's ready to be replaced. So there is one thing though I wanted to point out, which is kind of interesting. I've actually never seen another vehicle do this, but Ford used 2 different sizes of exhaust pipe, and the manifolds also were 2 different sizes from the driver to the passenger side. On the driver's side, they used a 2.5 inch, and on the passenger side, it's just a little bit smaller at 2 1/4. No idea why. I mean, at the power level these engines are putting out from the factory, it's probably not a huge deal. Maybe it was for an emissions related thing. Maybe it was performance. I don't really know. But it was just kind of interesting. Now, because I'm using the stock manifolds for now, I am going to be replacing them with headers a little bit later on. I will have to replace the flanges, when I do convert to the headers, I grab, like I said, I only have one of them now, but I'll just have to chop off these and replace them with this whenever the headers do come in. But for now, we're just going to start with these guys here. But because they're not perfectly round, you can kind of see they're crimped a little bit from where they made the bend. I'm going to go grab one of those little tailpipe expander tools just to try to make it a little bit rounder. And then this one, maybe I can stretch it just enough so it'll fit the inside of a 2.5-inch pipe without any gap. So when I weld it together, it'll have a nice perfect fit. So I got to run to the store and then we'll continue on. So while I'm building this exhaust, I just wanted to talk real quick about my choice in headers. Now everybody knows that a long tube is definitely going to give you a better performance increase over a mid or a short tube length header, but there's two main reasons why. Number one, and probably the most important, is ground clearance. Like I mentioned earlier, this truck is potentially going to have some suspension upgrades later on in its life. And long tube headers, they do take up a lot more space down on the frame where, say, a radius arm or a 4-link might want to go. And number two, you've got the problem of emissions. Like I said, we want to make this thing pass emissions, and a long tube header is going to make it more difficult to run a single style of exhaust, because to Y the two together, you've got to run it a little bit further back and underneath the transmission. And then by the time you put a single catalytic converter back there in the same way that the factory would have, well, it's just a lot further away and a lot less effective, because usually catalytic converters need to be closer to the manifold so they can get hot and help retain that heat so they can cook off the hydrocarbons or whatever catalytic converters do. So anyway, ground clearance and emissions. Those are the two reasons why I wanted to go with a shorty style of header. Now, that being said, most shorty headers are an unequal length tube because the cylinders on the back are very short to go into the collector. But I did order the Bassani equal length short headers, and they might even be considered a mid-length, I'm not exactly sure. But by having all the primary tubes the same length, it just kind of evens out the scavenging effect between all four cylinders, and it helps give it a little bit more increase in power over just a regular shorting. But honestly, most of the increase is going to come because of the fact that these exhaust manifolds have such small and restrictive ports, where, you know, any shorty header that has like 1.5 inches or 1 5/8 primary and a 2.5 inch collector, it's definitely going to flow a lot more than the stock cast iron manifolds. Beautiful. So I've got the front half of the exhaust system all done. It's tack welded in place and is pretty much ready to finish weld. Now my process from here on out, I'm basically going to take everything out from underneath the truck now that I know it all fits, that it's mocked up. And I'll fully weld the passenger side, and then I'll fully weld the driver's side, but keep them separate. Then I'll bolt everything back up underneath the truck just like it is now, and then I'll tack weld that one remaining joint on the Y pipe, so both halves will then be united. I'll take it back out from underneath the truck and then finish weld it on the bench. Now, the reason why I've finish weld everything on the bench is just because it's a lot easier to get to, and you can get a lot better quality weld, in my opinion, than you can kind of laying on your back underneath the truck. But one of the goals of this whole build, remember, was ground clearance. And I'll put a shot up on the screen right here to kind of show you guys how it used to be before I started doing anything. And the catalytic converter was definitely one of the lower spots. But now, check it out. I was able to get everything tucked up really nicely, really high above the frame. So now the transmission pan and the cross member, that's definitely the lowest point. The radius arm mounts, those stick down a little bit, but look, you can hardly tell that the exhaust is up there. And we've definitely gained a couple of inches of clearance compared to the old catalytic converter. And also, the nice thing is everything is routed in exactly the same kind of general direction as it did from the factory. There's a nice big gap between the oil pan and the transmission. Perfect spot to run an exhaust. Now, I will say, compared to a GMT 400 Chevy or GMC truck, there's a lot less space to work with on these early model Fords, and that's kind of why I had to stack the Y pipe vertically so the pipes are up and down rather than horizontally like I usually do on the GMT 400 stuff. But that's kind of the same way the factory did it, actually. They had the passenger side pipe feed in on top of the driver, so that's kind of the style that we're actually mimicking. I'm really happy with how it turned out. Ground clearance is exactly where it needed to be, so we're headed in the right direction. Now, this is actually where I'm going to have to call this video for the day. I do need to get it edited and get it uploaded for the weekend. But next time, I'm going to show you finish welding the front, and then I'll show you building the rest of the exhaust from the catalytic converter all the way to the tailpipe. And then we get to start it up and hear how it sounds. And I know I've said 100 times that I'm really not a Ford guy. And as much as I give Ford guys a hard time, I will say this one thing. I do believe these small block Windsors are one of the best sounding engines that are out there. So I can't wait to hear how this one is going to sound with the Venom 250 and a single cat on there. I think it'll be pretty nice. So I can't wait for that. You guys know what to do on this video. Click the like button and don't forget to subscribe. And I'll catch you guys back in a couple more days.